Thank you for coming back. Today I just wanted to discuss ribbing. Ribbing is a stretchy knitted fabric and it could have many different combinations. I'm just going to try to explain the gist of it today and knit. This rib is knit to purl to. Today I'm going to be doing a slightly different rib, and they could be any number of combinations, and they could even include cables. I'm not going to be getting into cables now, we will later, but it basically is a stretchy fabric, and you will see indents and areas where it comes out. So you'll see where it's normal and then where it's recessed, and it's usually consistent like this. Sometimes it's not. So we'll get started. I just like to explain to you to try to get you to have a feeling of knowing what it is rather than showing you one particular rib like knit to, purl to, because there's more than just that. I'm going to be doing purling 2 and knitting 1 all the way across so you can see what happens on the way back too. So I'm going to purl 2 stitches. And then I'm going to bring the yarn back and do a knit stitch. And then I'm going to bring the yarn forward and do 2 purls. I'm going to bring the yarn back and do a knit stitch. I'm going to bring the yarn forward and do 2 purls. So I'm doing a very consistent rib pattern. It's knit 2, purl 1 all the way across. Like I said, they're not always consistent, but and I want you to get used to being able to see what the stitches look like and start being able to identify them, because it's much easier to be able to knit according to what you see if you're keeping in a pattern rather than trying to memorize the pattern and figure out which row you're on. It's much more valuable to be able to identify your stitches. And look at that. I am going to add a stitch here. I went into it like I was going to knit it. There we go. I guess I wasn't counting last time. Okay, so since the last row ended with purl 2, what we're going to do is knit 2 on top of it, so that way it will match the other side. So we're knitting 2, then we'll bring the yarn forward and we'll purl 1. So on the opposite side, the purl 2, knit 1 now becomes knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, purl 1. So you're doing the opposite on the way back. And you just want to make sure that when you're purling, you bring the yarn forward. When you knit, you bring the yarn back. Let's show you that again. So I'm bringing the yarn forward before I purl, and I bring the yarn back before I knit. And that is the big thing to get used to when you are going back and forth between purling and knitting in the beginning, when you're going back and forth between the stitches. And then on the next row, I'll show you the stitches right below the needle where I am, so you can actually start getting used to what it looks like to identify them and go based off of what you see versus trying to remember which row you were on, whether you were on a knit 2 purl 1 or a purl 2 knit 1. Okay, so On this side was where we purled 2, knit 1. And the knit looks like that little tiny braid, and the purl looks like the little bump. See there? So on this row we would know that we start out with the purl 2, knit 1, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2, knit 1. But it's much easier to get used to identifying by what we see. So there's a bump, so we're going to purl. Then we look at the next stitch, it looks like a braid, so we're going to knit. Bring the yarn forward, because there's a bump, we need to purl. And then we'll look at what it looks like on the opposite side. So I'm going to flip it around, and over here, because the purls recess and the knit stick forward, this little tiny bump is the purl, and these braids are the knits. That little tiny bump is the purl. So we're going to start with knitting 2 this time. That's knitting 2, bringing the yarn forward and purling 1. I think once I get editing software, these are going to be perfect times for doing a little bit of the time lapse. Once I could do time lapse, I could knit several rows, so you get a chance to see a good amount of the fabric rather than just a tiny bit. And then we'll flip it around so you can see what it looks like on the opposite side. So on this side, if you look straight at it, it looks almost like stockinette until you see those little tiny bumps, but on the opposite side is where you're going to be able to tell it's more of a rib. So we have knitting 2, it's purling 2, knit 1, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2, knit 1. And the knitting 1 is the one that pops forward. And then on the back side, the knitting 2 stitches pop forward and the purl is recessed. So there we are. I hope that kind of helps. I hope you can start learning the difference between the little purl stitches, which are the 2 little bumps, and then the knit stitch, which looks more like a V. Starting to be able to identify those are very helpful. And I don't know, if you guys want to see other knitted fabrics too, like you want me to do knit 2, purl 2, or maybe creating a rib with a cable in it as well, you can let me know, and I'd be happy to do some of that. But I was really just wanting to get you to be able to identify a rib. as it being stretchy, and just knowing that there's areas that are recessed and areas that pop forward. And that's pretty much what ribbing is all about, although you could have different amount of stitches. Like this one is knit 2, purl 2. Most of the ones I have is knit 2, purl 2 right now. I don't have, oh actually I do, I think behind me, yeah, I have another rib. I'm working on a pair of gauntlets for one of the patterns that I'm going to teach you guys, and this is cabling, and it is a cabled rib. I have a cable here, and the cables are 6-stitch cables, and then there's knitting 2, purling 2, knit 2, purl 2, and then I have our cable. There's the purl 2, knit 2, purl 2. But because it's separating with the purls, see how stretchy this is? So that is also a rib, even though it has cables in it. So if you guys do want to have me do swatches of different cables, not cables, if you guys want me to have swatches of different types of rib, let me know. I'm happy to do them. I just didn't know if you will find it necessary, because once you know how to do it, you can follow it easily without seeing me do it. Anyhow, this is going to be it for the weekend, I believe, for the right-handed knitting. We'll see how much time I get tomorrow. But start thinking about what it is you'd like me to do, and let me know. And so I can go ahead and get started on some of the stuff you actually want to know. I'm thinking that the next tutorial will probably be about increasing and decreasing, and I wrote a pattern a long time ago. It's lost because it was in an old computer, but it's easy, so I could rewrite it for a triangle shawl. And that actually shows increasing. So I was thinking of increasing for the next tutorial, and the shawl pattern actually be the pattern that comes along with it. So let me know if that sounds good, or if you want to see something else first. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks. Bye.